Thank you for the help, Vika Filatova, for designing this for me to use. So I'm going to choose copy image, toggle back to Photoshop, and paste. And my working space of my document is sRGB. sRGB, probably not the best working space to work with. The reason why it is this working space is because I took this image from the web. My package here is, my label is way too big. That's okay. I'm not daunted. Command T in Photoshop is transform, and I'm going to transform this holding the shift key so it stays proportional and slide it over, and then I'm going to match for height so it basically just covers the original like so. V is the move tool, and this is my front panel. So now my front panel is pretty much on here. All right, so I'm going to zoom in, Command plus, and if I move the front panel down, it's a little hard to tell because this is designed like a fence, but this label would take a curve. It would not be straight across, obviously, because that would look really bad. It would not look real at all. So there's a couple of ways that you can do this. The way I like to do it is by using the warp tool. So the layer is selected, and I'm going to choose Edit, Transform, Warp. The warp tool gives me these grid-like handles, and I also like to use the rulers. That's under View, Rulers, or Command R. Having the rulers will allow me to find the edges that I want to drag up to, and I'll show you as I go what I mean here. I'm going to drag another ruler line here. So using my bullet handles here, there's a few of them. It's a little hard to see, but there's this light blue line there, right? So I'm going to click this little bullet handle and I'm going to drag it up to that light blue line, which is the same thing I'm going to do out on this one, and then on this one I'm going to drag it up, and on this one I'm going to drag it up. Now what you're not seeing, or was difficult to see, is that there are little handles. See that? See it now? These handles are your curve handles, just like when you're working in Illustrator. So I want to place this curve handle, and then I'm going to use a ruler guide so that when I place the second curve handle, they drop down to the same height. Also looking at the relationship between this vertical line of the grid and the tip of the handle, and this vertical line of the grid and this tip of the handle, and trying to get them to match as closely as possible. And now on the top, I'm going to drag this bullet handle up to my point. I might not have made that ruler guide high enough, but I'm starting to see the curve. I think I will raise the ruler guide line. So I'm going to drag up, and here I'm going to drag up. Okay. And then the same thing here. I can work with my curve handle. So this one touches the line, and then this one touches the line. I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to hit return. Now, in order to get the exact size of the jar to be the cutout or negative shape to cut out the label, I'm going to do the following. To keep myself from having to start all the way over again, I'm going to take my layer 2, which is my label layer, and I'm going to make a copy of it by dragging it on the copy button here, new layer. And then I'm going to hide it underneath the other layer and turn it off, so it's out of the way and safe. Then I'm going to select the jar and use Select, Load Selection, Layer 1 Transparency. Layer 1 Transparency essentially means the shape of the jar. So if I hide that layer, you can see the marching ants are right on the edge of the jar's transparency. But I want to be on the label layer. That's very important. Then I'm going to choose Select Inverse, which means I'm selecting everything but the label on the label layer, or everything outside of the jar area on the label layer is what I really meant to say, and now I'll press delete. So now I know it's the right size and it fits and it has that very slight curve. I'm not sure it's really curved enough on the top, although the bottom looks convincing to me. So then I'm going to go to View, Rulers, and hide the rulers. And also, I didn't mean to hide the rulers, I just meant to hide the guides. So I'm going to go to Clear Guides. All right, so deselect. And I definitely feel like more curve is needed here. So again, it's Edit, Transform, Warp. And this time I'm just going to curve from the guide or the warp guides here and click and drag straight down and click and drag straight down. Now that feels a little better. I'm using the TLAR method. You know what that is, right? That looks about right, the TLAR method. And I'll do it again. Edit, Transform, Warp. You can click right on the grid and just drag the grid down. Okay? I'm going to hold the Shift key. That will make sure it just drags straight down. Hit Return, and then sometimes I'll do Command Z, and then Command Z. Put it back the way it was. That's how it is. That's how it was. That's how it is. So I'm pretty hip with that. I'm good with that. And again, Edit, Transform. I think this will be the last time. And Warp. And I'll bring this up a snurch. And again, I probably do want a ruler guide here, because I want it to be symmetrical, and I'll bring this one straight up a snurch. And hit Return. Pretty good. Okay, so the label layer here just looks a little not sharp, otherwise known as blurry. I'm not a huge fan of sharpening, but you should know that the probably most controlled sharpen that you can get is unsharp mask, and I'll talk about that in the next movie.